Something unusual is happening in Denver, and insiders are saying it might be bigger than anyone wants to admit, because what began as a quiet personnel concern has now turned into a developing situation that could change the entire outlook of the Broncos' defense for the rest of the season and maybe beyond. For years, this team has struggled to find consistency at inside linebacker, a position that has haunted them since long before Sean Payton took over. And yet every time the Broncos seemed ready to stabilize, that fate had other plans. Now the latest news coming out of the organization feels less like a setback and more like the beginning of something that could define the rest of their campaign. The story began to unravel earlier this week when reports surfaced that Alex Singleton, the tackling machine, the vocal leader, the player who gave structure to that middle unit, had undergone surgery for testicular cancer. The news hit hard both inside the locker room and across the fan base. Singleton was not only the leading tackler, but also the emotional core of a defense that had been fighting to recover its identity since that disastrous start last year. The organization announced that the plan is for Singleton to return eventually, but no timetable has been revealed. And in a league where every week matters, the silence speaks volumes. But the blows did not stop there. On Tuesday, the Broncos confirmed that Kareem Reed, another key rotational linebacker, was heading to injured reserve after suffering a hamstring injury in the win over the Raiders. Is the kind of injury that lingers and takes away depth when you can least afford a combine that. With the continuing absence of Drew Sanders, who is still on injured reserve and facing the possibility of missing yet another full season, and suddenly the middle of Denver's defense looks alarmingly thin. Inside the building, there is a growing sense of urgency and even quiet concern as the coaching staff tries to piece together a plan before Sunday. Right now, the depth chart lists only Drake Greenlaw and Justin Sternad as healthy inside linebackers. On the 53-man roster, the players who were never meant to carry the full load, but now must become the anchors of a weakened core. Sources say that either Lavelle Bailey or Jordan Turner from the practice squad could be elevated before the next game, but that move would only be a short-term patch at best, and the timing could not be worse, because next on the schedule is Kansas City, led by Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, the players who specialize in destroying defenses exactly through the middle, where Denver is most exposed. Analysts around the league have already started speculating how Mahomes will attack this weakness. It is almost perfect to set up. The Chiefs' offense loves to isolate linebackers in space and force mismatches, using Kelce and Rashee Rice running those deep crossers and option routes that test every inch of coverage responsibility. Denver's secondary may hold its own, but without strong play from the inside backers, the entire scheme collapses from within. The fear is not just that Mahomes will find the gaps, but that this could turn into one of those statement games where Kansas City reasserts its dominance and Denver's fragile progress is shattered again. The problem is compounded by the fact that the trade deadline has already passed, which means there are no reinforcements coming through official channels. The front office cannot make a splash move to fill the gap, and so the only remaining options are to promote from within or scan the market for available free agents. Reports indicate that the scouting department has already begun evaluating street free agents, and a few familiar names have surfaced, among them Kizzer White, Juwan Bentley, and surprisingly former Bronco Josie Jewell. Jewell stepped away earlier this year due to lingering concussion symptoms, but those close to him suggest he might be open to returning if the right situation presents itself. The idea of bringing back Jewell has stirred debate among insiders. Some believe it could provide instant leadership and familiarity with the defensive system, while others argue that relying on a player still recovering from head injuries is too risky. But desperation breeds creativity, in Denver may have no other choice if the team truly wants to salvage this part of the season. The question now becomes how long they can afford to wait, because every week without stability at linebacker increases the pressure on the rest of the defense behind closed doors. There are whispers that the coaching staff is already reworking portions of the defensive playbook, adjusting alignments, and preparing to lean more heavily on hybrid looks involving safeties dropping down into the box. It is a dangerous adjustment, but sometimes the only option when personnel losses stack up so quickly. Some players have reportedly been told to prepare for increased snaps in unconventional roles, and one assistant coach was overheard saying that this week's game plan might be unlike anything they have used before. Meanwhile, the fans are holding their breath, wondering how much more the team can endure. This was supposed to be the season when things turned around, when the defense finally matched the offensive potential. But the harsh reality of the NFL has struck again, and now the Broncos must navigate the most critical stretch of their season with an uncertain roster and a shrinking margin for error. So what happens? Next, that is the question circling every sports bar, every talk show, every online thread dedicated to Broncos Nation. Could the team pull off a surprise signing in the coming days? Could a comeback story emerge from nowhere? Could Josie Jewell return to the Mile High City and bring stability to a defense desperate for a spark? No one knows for sure, but the tension is growing by the hour. Keep your eyes locked on Denver, because the situation is changing fast, and every new piece of information could reshape the story entirely. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, hit like, share your predictions in the comments, and subscribe, because this is one of those moments where being first to know might make all the difference. The Broncos have faced challenges before, but this time feels different, darker, more uncertain. The only thing clear now is that something is happening behind the scenes, and when the truth comes out, it might just rewrite the entire trajectory of their season.